Greetings, everybody. It is I, the Nomad, coming to you live from the wastelands of the internet. Yes, I am here once again to deliver news. News of the day, news of the week, news that I find interesting to me, not necessarily to anybody else. Welcome, welcome. And as usual, we will start with the Ukraine, shall we? Ukraine has a problem no one is talking about. Young women are leaving in droves. Why is that? Can we guess? Can we guess why that could possibly be? In a classroom in Western Ukraine, a group of teenagers are thinking about their futures. 17-year-old Kira Yuliamenko, I'm not trying to butcher your name, I cannot pronounce that, has always planned to go to university in her home country. But in between sitting her finals exams this month, or sitting for her final exams, excuse me, I should say, she has been dreaming about leaving to study abroad. The war has helped us to understand who we are, she said during a discussion in an English lesson in her school. Lyceum 33 in Lviv, all right, or Kiev, it has broadened our horizons and made us more independent. Since the war broke out and martial law was introduced, young men have been banned from leaving Ukraine after they turn 18. But young women like Akira, we're just going to use your first name, are free to leave. In 3 years of conflict, large numbers of them have chosen to do so, swapping war-torn Ukraine for European cities far from the threat of Vladimir Putin's bombs and drones. Few have returned. More are leaving with every passing year. As well as being a brain drain, some of Ukraine's brightest and best are among those leaving the country. The immigration wave is also a demographic time bomb. Idea by Howdy Matt Berkeley. No shit. Now here's your question for you, folks. Why? Why have the Ukrainians, being the defenders of democracy, fighting the evil henchman Vladimir Putin? Why are they such misogynists that they don't sit up there and demand that the women upheld their part of the bargain in their society and join the war effort? Why is it only young men are prevented from leaving? Why? And why, given the chance, all right, is this happening? Are these women less patriotic? Aren't they concerned about the nation that they live within? What's happening here? Does this surprise anybody? Also, If these people, these leftists, believe the bullshit that they're doing, they would demand. Why isn't the EU demanding, all right, that these Ukrainian women fight and die for their country? Why is it only the men should have to fight and die for the country? If you're truly liberal and you believe that men and women are, you believe in equality, why aren't you demanding that equality be realized within the nation? Now, I'm not saying that I see anything wrong with the women leaving the country. It's better for the country for that they do leave. Why? Because if even if they do survive, and I don't think they will, I don't mean the women, I mean the nation state of the Ukraine. Um, even if the Ukrainian society, if it survives, you're going to need women to repopulate the country. And while one man can copulate with multiple women and produce multiple offspring, a woman, all right, doesn't have that same relationship demographic. In other words, one man can breed 100 women in just a few days, but a woman, at best, can breed from a man once a year. This is called biology. I'm not suggesting this. I'm not talking about the moral convictions of any of this at all either. I'm just pointing this out. But these young women are fleeing because what do they fight? What would they fight for? They don't believe in the nation state. They don't believe in their nation. They don't believe in those big democracy, or at least they don't believe that Zelensky is representative of democracy that they want to live in. We are more independent. We're more individuals. No, those were her words. It has broadened our horizons. What horizons? You see, every time you talk to liberals, what you get from them is never specifics about anything, right? And she exemplifies this. Okay, she doesn't love the Ukraine. Now, why do I say that? Well, let me ask a question for you. If you love something, how does love manifest itself? No matter what it is. If you love someone, how is it manifested? It's manifested in sacrifice. You can say you love something all you want, but if you're not willing to sacrifice for it, do you really love it? If and don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about sacrificing in the sense of always putting your life on the line per se. It could be just as simple as shutting your mouth and keeping your mouth shut about something you may disagree with on a personal level, but overall you're willing to sacrifice saying something to let something happen. It also could be the opposite. You're willing to sit up there and face social ostracism because you are speaking up about what you believe. Now it kind of creates an interesting dynamic. Good morning, Oz. Right? But if we're talking about the Ukraine and what's really going on, the media lately has been talking about all the great advances of the Ukrainians in the Sumy region. Well, let's take a look at this, shall we? This is where the Sumy region is. Where are these great advances? Oh, they're fighting over here now. All right. Sumi has been getting hit with numbers of drones and everything else. Um, the Russians had made a major push through this region. They are now stabilizing these lines and pushing it back, which is good. All right, from a Ukrainian perspective. All right, Kharkiv. This is a growing threat toward Kharkiv. All right, I can see this slowly building. Down here, you have continuous movement. However, in this direction, this is becoming a bit less stable. And then if I take a look at an area that I was very curious about right here, this is now going to become a trap. All right. I don't know how many forces are in here, but when you have a major waterway like this in between here trying to escape, and it looks like they've closed the exits and so forth from here, you're looking at this going to be now starved to death. All right. So it is what it is. Uh, the Russians are continuing to advance. People are another city here is being claimed by the Russians that they've now taken this area here. Their goal is to take this entire region here over, um, and annex that region in totality. Down here you have missiles being fired back and forth, so cruise missiles, but overall not much is going on. All right, obviously the air defenses, their claims of how many Shahed drones um, are being deployed and destroyed. It'll be interesting because one of the problems that they're going to be having with those drones is they're being produced by Iran. Iran has other things. We'll be talking about Iran in a minute. And then what you have is Lukashenko meeting with Presidential Special Envoy Kellogg, all right, to act as a mediator with Vladimir Putin in an effort to regain the peace initiative to try and create a ceasefire and stop the dying. Okay, it's it's not going to it's not going well. Right, people are still dying. I have said this many times to people. Okay, um, when we talk about the Ukraine, in many ways, this is a civil war where we don't have a dog in the fight. I don't mind, all right, uh, helping the Ukrainians to an extent, all right, to an extent. But this is a European matter, mostly, and the Europeans haven't stepped up. They still haven't stepped up. So if the Europeans don't give a shit about their own nation states, why the hell should I? Why the hell should the United States? Why should we sit there and be bleeding billions and billions of treasure every year, especially toward someone who's not an ally? Zelensky is not an ally. And I don't care what anybody says. He's not an ally of Europe either, per se, but he's definitely not an American ally, so who gives a shit? Now, talking about the Iranians, we have this. This is the Iranian frontier. All right? It's getting the shit kicked out of it. All right? You have deaths, Revolutionary Guard deaths being wiped out all over the place, which seems to be what the Israelis are focusing on. Meanwhile, they're launching attacks left and right. Okay? The Iranians are just firing fire and forget missiles. Their accuracy is hideously bad. And of course, they hit a hospital. But what else do you have? No, in America, you have Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil is being released from detention or being ordered to be released from detention. The Columbia University activist was released. The Trump administration filed an appeal for his release. The pro-Palestinian activist and Columbia University graduate student Mahmoud Khalil all right, was released from detention Friday evening, ending more than 3 months in custody in a test of the executive branch's power to unilaterally act against legal U.S. residents. He's not a legal U.S. resident. This is a lie. Galil, whose plight has been center stage in President Donald Trump's crackdown on vocal opponents of Israel's incursion into Gaza, has been in an immigration agent's custody since March. He was released from detention center in Louisiana just after 6:30 p.m. Friday, hours after a federal judge ordered he be released. This federal judge needs to be removed. Hello, Jensen. Welcome, happy birthday to G. Yes. All right. Personally, this guy needs to be removed from the country. He needs to be kicked out of the nation. And I don't care about his wife and his infant son. This guy was leading violent protests and anti-Semitic protests attacking students of Jewish descent, American students of Jewish descent, and we're supposed to just sit back and go, oh, but it's okay. He wasn't protesting a genocide. There's no right person who should be detained for actually protesting a genocide. It's not a genocide. Another lie propagated by NBC News. These people are disgraceful. In an earlier statement, his wife, Noor Abdallah, said she can finally breathe a sigh of relief and know that Mahmoud is on his way home to me and Dean, who never should have been separated from his father. We know this ruling does not begin to address the injustices the Trump administration has brought upon our family and so many others the government is trying to silence for speaking out against Israel's ongoing genocide against the Palestinians. She said that the ACLU, another disgraced left-wing radical hack organization that doesn't give a shit about quote-unquote civil liberties. These people need to be removed. Well, on the war front with Iran, sheltering in a bunker, Iran's supreme leader names potential successors. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has not only picked replacements in his chain of military command in case they are killed in Israeli airstrikes, he has also named 3 senior clerics to replace him, should he too be slain. Wary of assassination, Iran's supreme leader mostly speaks with his commanders through a trusted aide now, suspending electronic communications that made it harder to find him, 3 Iranian officials familiar with his emergency war plan say. Ensconced in a bunker, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has picked an array of replacements down his chain of military command in case more of his valued lieutenants are killed. In a remarkable move, the official said that Ayatollah Khamenei has named 3 senior clerics as candidates to succeed him should he be killed, as well, perhaps most telling inspiration, of the precarious moment he and the 3 decades rule are facing. Ayatollah Khamenei has taken the extraordinary measures to preserve the Islamic Republic ever since Israel launched a series of surprise attacks last Friday. Now, first of all, let's start with the fact that surprise attacks? Surprise attacks, huh? Who's surprised? Who was surprised that Israel attacked Iran? Please raise your hands. If you were shocked, I say, that Iran was attacked by Israel. Nobody should be surprised about this. You can be a little bit surprised about just how effective they've been. But it amazes me how they downplay what Iran's been doing. And I've said this a long time. Back when we first went into Iraq, I told people I'm hoping that Iran is next because Iran is the worst of the lot. Once we secured Iraq, the next thing we should have done is put our armored front in there and rolled with B-52 strikes all over Iran. Of course, we should have done Iraq. Everyone talks about, oh, it was a failed attack in Iraq. Really? Is Iraq threatening America anymore? Is Iraq threatening American planes anymore? There's a failed attack in Iraq. We only attacked Iraq because it was because of lies of weapons of mass destruction. Did we find any? Well, we found a few, but it was a lie. Do you know the difference between a lie and being wrong? The fact that you don't know the difference between what's a lie and what isn't already is a problem. And this is one of the problems. We lost the ability to be honest in the West. We can't even be honest with ourselves. And this is a major, major problem with the American experiment. Is you have to be willing to be honest more than anything else. And when you can't be honest with yourself, especially within the media, you have to be willing. If you're not honest with yourself, the problem is the people who talk about our intervention in Iraq. You can say we were wrong to go into Iraq. Okay. You can list your reasons. There are people who would disagree with you. I'm one of them. I don't have a problem, quote unquote, going into Iraq. My problems with going into Iraq aren't going into Iraq. My problems start with how we went into Iraq. Who we let lead in Iraq. I don't believe in this tit for tat bullshit. I would have fired the American leadership that we used, including that asshole General Richardson, who was one of the main guys that we put in charge of Iraq. We should have fired that son of a bitch long before. Why? Because he was doing things on politics. He was playing political games rather than being a military leader. If you want to really look at what happened with a lot of the American things that went on there, everyone wants to sit up there and talk about how bad we are around the world, how bad America is. They'll point to Abu Ghraib. Look at this, Abu Ghraib, which is horrific. Well, first of all, Abu Ghraib, while disgusting, okay, and disgraceful, was hardly heinous. But who was at fault for that? Well, the people who did it. Okay, yeah, I would agree with that. The people who did it are at fault. But you know who else was at fault for that? General Richardson, the guy in charge of the whole thing. Why? Because he put a reserve unit in place of an area that had no business ever having reserves in it. You don't put reservists in charge of high priority enemy assets as guards. That was just bad decision making all along the line. You also don't make decisions like, we don't want to shoot looters because Well, they're just trying to get back what was stolen from them from 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 Saddam's regime. Don't you understand? We need to hand out cookies. We don't need to act like we're in charge. La 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 la. Then the people will respect us. La 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 la. Really? Richardson and his entire staff should have been relieved of command and never allowed to sit up there and ever, right, lead American forces ever again. Far too much of the military as a whole is political. Richardson couldn't bring himself to do what everybody in the military knew what needed to be done. But what's really sad is when it comes to Iran, all right, after we had taken it over, we just left our troops out there to be targets of the flippin' Iranians. Muqtada al-Sadr and all the rest of his clowns were being fueled directly from Iran. Their weapons were coming directly from Iran, and we stood there acting like, I don't know what we can do about this. we really can't do anything about the IEDs being produced in Iran and killing American soldiers. What can we do? Oh, I'm so afraid. I was so disgusted with these people. So disgusted with them. You know, Iran was the ones doing it. You warn Iran, saying, "Stop it now." The next time an American bomb goes off, you wipe out a section of Tehran completely. Wipe it out. And you tell the Iranians, "Look, for every man that's killed over here, we're going to wipe out a city in Iran until you frickin' stop. And if you don't stop, we'll just bring in the thing and we'll bomb you back into the Stone Age so you can't do it to us anymore. We're going to wipe out anything that moves. We're going to wipe out all of your electrical power. We're going to wipe out all your grid that relies upon it."
Did you know you're bitching out loud?
I know I'm bitching aloud. Good morning, Sherardi. Okay, she just bounced out. I know I'm bitching. Let's get on to the next story with this group. U.S. moves B-2 stealth bombers capable of carrying bunker-busting bombs as Israel hits nuclear reactor. All right, Iran's supreme leader names his successor in the live updates from the Daily Mail. U.S. president has moved B-2 bombers capable of carrying the bunker-busting bombs as he continues to debate joining Israel in strikes on Iran. It comes as Israel hit a nuclear enrichment site in Isfahan, Iran, for the second time since the conflict between the two Middle Eastern countries broke out in June 13th. After a number, that was Friday the 13th, by the way, after a number of senior military and scientific figures in Iran were killed by Israeli strikes, Iran's supreme leader has named possible successors in case he is assassinated. Okay, well, we are moving B-2 bombers. And of course, Trump has given the Iranians 2 weeks, all right, which is about a week now. They have a week left before he quote unquote decides. Now, for those who keep coming back, well, Trump keeps waffling on the issue. This isn't waffling, folks. This is preparation. It's going to take 2 weeks to put everything in place for what he is preparing to do. Because it won't just be, oh, we drop a couple of bombs on the nuke site. That's also why we sit up there and release the F-22s to the air. We have a number of things that we are prepping in the region. Now, an interesting thing happened to Ms. Nomad, or Mrs. Nomad, my wife. She asked a question of me yesterday. She goes, "Well, what do I think about giving the weapons platform, in this case the B-2 bombers, to Israel and let Israel sit up there and go ahead and take out the Iranians?" And I told my wife the truth, right? Which is no. I would never allow the Israelis to have a B-2 bomber, our best bomber in the area. All right, I wouldn't allow Israel within 70 miles of it if I could avoid it. And she asked me, well, why? I said, because they can't be trusted. Well, you think they're a threat to Americans? I said, no, it's not that I believe that they're a threat to America as America as a whole, but that doesn't mean, all right, that they're going to do what's necessary or what's needed for American interests. They have their own interests, and when ours align with them, great. But when ours don't align with them, Israel will stab us in the back, all right, any chance it gets. Israel has not been the greatest of allies to America. I'm sorry. No, I can hear it now, but no, man. Especially Jensen was earlier in the chat. But no, man. There's a lot of Europeans that are not friendly allies with America that have stabbed you in the back too. That's just very true. That's very true. But Israel has not always done what's best for America in the region or even anywhere in the world. Now, I personally don't have a problem with us getting involved and blowing the hell out of Iran, all right, with B-52s and B-2 bombers, and you just keep bombing them into the Stone Age. You bomb everything that has power. You bomb everything that sits up there and produces oil. You bomb the entire coastline to make sure nothing, all right, can come in and out of there. Right? You wipe out their fleets. You wipe out their missile systems. You wipe out. Iran has been killing Americans for 5 decades, folks. Until you start to understand how many Americans have died constantly because of Iran, maybe you'll start to figure out that Iran, whether we want to go to war with them or not, is at war with us. And they demonstrate it every single year. And we sit there and take it and take it and take it. And we'll do a pinprick strike here and a pinprick strike there, now and then. Well, we got to call for to hell with constraint. To hell with it. This idea that war can be limited. Well, you got to go in with a limited war with these people. You can't just sit up there and go full bore against them. Why not? We have constrained ourselves and limited ourselves time and again to try and be quote unquote proportional with the Iranians, and it has never worked. So basically, they need to learn, okay, since you don't understand this, we're going to make it brutally clear to all of the Iranians, not just the Ayatollah Khamenei or the Iranian Revolutionary or Republican Guard or whatever they call themselves this week. To all the Iranians, leave Americans alone. You bring in B-52s and you begin to grid every single city and you wipe it off the face of the earth. Anything that moves, if you see a car that's being driven, you wipe it out. You take them back and you say, okay, you got a donkey cart and that's all you get anymore. We don't need to put troops on the ground. We don't need to sit up there and go, okay, well, it's a proportional response. No, it's time after 5 decades of us going back and forth with these idiots. It's time we end the proportionality of this bullshit and put the fear of God into that entire region and say, look, enough's enough. And you prevent them from ever being able to do that bullshit ever again. At least for 50 years, they won't be able to do it. We'll get 50 years of peace from these sons of bitches after we take them back into the Stone Age, and that's what we should be doing. And when the UN comes crying, oh, 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 you gotta let, oh, 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 you just look them dead in the face and say, where was your bitching when they sit up there and were killing Americans? Why didn't you put sanctions on Iran? Why didn't you go try to stop them from doing it? People, they were shooting at ships throughout the region. They were paying hijackers to grab ships from other nations so they could steal the oil from them, let alone the oil that they're not supposed to be shipping anywhere else. So I don't have a problem bombing them back into the Stone Age. But what does the AP report on? The AP comes out there and goes, Iranian missile strikes Israeli crown jewel of silence. See, the Israelis the Iranians are able to go back after the evil Zionists. For years, Israel has targeted Iranian nuclear scientists, hoping to choke progress on Iranian's nuclear program by striking it at the brains behind it. Now, with Iran and Israel in open direct conflict, scientists in Israel have found themselves in the crosshairs after an Iranian missile struck a premier research institute known for its work in life sciences and physics, among other fields. While no one was killed at the Weizmann Institute of Science earlier Sunday, it caused heavy damage to multiple labs on campus, snuffing out years of scientific research and sending a chilling message to Israeli scientists that they and their expertise are now targets of the escalating conflict with Iran. Because the wonderful AP likes Iranian terror, sides with Palestinian terrorists around the world, all right? As if the terrorists in Israel, all right, are perfectly acceptable because Israel is an ally of America, so they've got to be harmed. They have to be harmed. Why aren't you talking about the fact that they hit a freaking hospital that had no military presence to it all? Well, but no man. Israel targeted a hospital in Gaza. They targeted a hospital. And what was the hospital being used for? But that doesn't matter. It was a hospital. The fact that it was a command center for Hamas. But it was a hospital, man. It was a hospital. No decrying the fact that how dare Hamas sit up there and hide like cowards in a hospital. No. There's an equivalency there to the AP. These people are disgraceful. They're disgraceful, folks. This is indiscriminate bombing of civilians, and yet I hear nothing from the UN telling the Iranians, knock it off. There's not one group decrying how dare the Iranians or sit up there and target just generic residential districts with bombs and stuff. Where are the people screaming war crimes? But houses in residential districts are being shot by Israel. Don't you understand? Is Hamas hiding in those? But that's not the point. It's still families. But you're willing to decry, war crimes there, but you're not willing to sit up and decry it all. Well, both sides are bad. But you only call out one. Both sides are bad. I take exception with with the fact that whatever experiments were being performed were digitally recorded off-site. Pretty sure that's standard procedure these days. Nah, not really. Uh, I doubt that many years of research are really necessarily like you. I doubt that the damage being done is is permanently significant or even gonna set back years of research. Okay, but it does set back things when you don't have classrooms to perform certain experiments in and then to log them. And as far as the data being logged digitally, uh, to an extent, I would agree with you. But at the same time, you still got to type it up. You still got to send it. And if it's really highly classified stuff, you got to encrypt it and everything else. So hard to say. All right, is it years worth of research? Not really. Meanwhile, we got idiots like this moron. He was biking across Iran and documented it on TikTok. Ian Anderson, known as Ridewithian, all right, to his followers online, said leaving the country was possible only with the help of his guide Reza and the U.S. State Department. We should have just left him there, okay? From navigating tough weather in Australia to being questioned by police in Egypt, Ian Anderson has faced many challenges in his journeys biking across continents and documenting them on social media. But the American creator, known as Ridewithian, all right, to his 43,300 followers on TikTok, never had war on his list of possible hurdles until last week. He didn't? He didn't, huh? Then he's an idiot. Okay? He's an absolute idiot. Amid his 29-day trek across Iran, he found himself stuck after Israeli forces began a preemptive strike on the country. As Iran and Israel continue to trade attacks, visitors like Anderson have scrambled to find ways to safely exit the Middle East. He was among several people to document how he was able to depart the country, and he has shared his journey with his followers. The idiot should have been left there. What were you doing bike riding across Iran, all right, at the same time they're continually funneling weapons to the Houthis? He didn't realize it was going to go to a war. What did he think was going to happen? Pedal faster. The guy's an absolute moron. This shows you the entitled mentality of too many of these flippin' idiots. Everything is just sweetness and light, and I can be like little Brady Smurf. Ba la 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 la. I'm gonna bike across. I'm gonna bike across an area, all right, where women are raped and brutalized all the time. But it's really a nice country. Oh, it's so beautiful out here. Oh, look at me. I'm doing something significant to the world as I ride my bike across the hellscape known as Iran. But it's really beautiful here. La 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 la. Meanwhile, how many people saw this story? Gabbard's standing in Trump world comes into question. The National Director of Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard's strength and standing within the Trump administration is coming under question after the president twice publicly brushed off her testimony that Iran was not close to developing a nuclear weapon amid reports of tension between the two. President Trump nominated Tulsi Gabbard, all right, as his intelligence director, despite some doubts from both parties, and her anti-war stance fits in with the MAGA movement's aversion to the U.S. getting sucked into foreign conflicts. But the two are not longtime allies, and she increasingly appears to be on the outside looking in as Trump crafts his policy on the Iran-Israeli war, or Israeli-Iran war. She was rewarded for sticking by Trump during the 2024 election and being a fierce advocate for him, particularly as it relates to military intervention, said one Trump ally of Gabbard, explaining why Trump nominated her to the intelligence post. A video Gabbard posted on social media last week following a visit to Hiroshima, a Japanese city where the U.S. dropped an atomic bomb near the end of World War II, has come under heavy attention in the Trump world. In more than 3-minute video, which was posted to her personal account on social platform X, Twitter, all right, Gabbard details the devastating consequence of nuclear weapons and accuses political elite and warmongers of carelessly fomenting fear and tensions between nuclear powers. Notice they haven't gone into her statement, all right, where she stood up there and said, all right, in a congressional briefing, all right. Now, why is this? Right? Why is that? Because when she stood up there and told that to the intelligence briefing, all right, it was how many months ago? How many months ago was it that she stood up there and made that comment? Saying and basically what she was saying is that she lacks the trust, all right, in the intelligence community as she saw it. That's really what she was saying, right? When she said that Iran wasn't close to producing nuclear weapons, all right. What was she relying on as her evidence for that? Well, she was relying on her international months ago. She was relying on her international people who were telling her that, but they're no longer saying that now. So to say that Trump is on the outs with Gabbard, I don't think he cares what she said. He said she was wrong when she said that. And did he call her a liar? No, he said she was wrong. The fact is you can be wrong. Okay? You can be wrong about these issues. And as other intelligence information comes in, all right, you have to be willing to adjust to the new reality as it comes in. And one of the new realities, folks, when it came to what was happening, was an admission by the IAEA of just how extensive Iran's enrichment had been and was currently. Because they hadn't been telling people, all right, the truth. The IAEA was forced to come clean as to just how effective the uranium enrichment plans and how far along that they were. Regardless of whether or not you got assholes in Iran who run to Turkey, of course, and go, oh, these were just peaceful nuclear facilities. They were being monitored by the IAEA when the IAEA came back and said, no, they weren't. We didn't know. All of a sudden, we found a lot of proof, and they were forced to admit it because one of their own people outed it. They were still trying to hide it when one of their people, all right, one of their quote-unquote whistleblowers, came out and said, no, the IAEA is lying, and here's the evidence. And they showed the documents, and the IAEA had to come back and go, well, yeah, they're real. So Tulsi, wanting to, of course, believe the IAEA, why? Because, to be honest, Tulsi has her own problems. But do you know the one problem she doesn't have? Is honesty. She's at least honest about what she's seen. Now, she might be foolish to sit up there and rely upon certain people that you shouldn't rely on. But that's part of the learning process, too. But she didn't lie. She was just wrong. If I'm filling out a math homework and I miss a problem, does it mean I lied on the problem? No, it means I was wrong. Did I intentionally attempt to deceive? That's what a lie is. An intent to deceive. All right, let's go on to a different story, shall we? Back to the homeland. Thousands of laid off government workers are flooding the shrinking job market. Oh no. Thousands of private government consultants laid off during the Trump administration's cost-cutting crusade are increasingly flooding a shrinking labor market. Job postings among 7 of the 10 consulting companies singled out by the GSA for contract cuts are down 27% since 2023 and about 11% from a year ago, according to data scraped from job boards, all right, by labor market analytics firm Lightcast. Booz Allen Hamilton Holding Company and Deloitte LLP had almost 1,200 to 8,200 fewer openings last year, respectively. Both announced job cuts later this quarter. The job market is certainly not great for these people, said Ron Heffrick, Lightcast principal economist. If they lay off people, they're probably not going to backfill them. No shit. The federal government employment shrank by 22,000 in May, bringing jobs lost since January to 59,000, according to the latest jobs report. That excludes those on paid leave or receiving ongoing severance pay. About 75,000 workers in total. All right, the initial buyout deal that will pay them until September, with thousands more in another round of offers. And yet the job market and unemployment are way down. But not for the people who are used to doing government consulting. Gee, I wonder why. What was your prior job? Well, I was the DEI management consultant for firm XYZ. And you think you're going to get a job in today's job market? What do you specialize in? Creating labor relations boards? Equity, inclusion, and diversity? I can do equity and diversity training for everybody. Might want to think you need a new job. But Bloomberg has to announce, oh my God, government workers are out of job. What a crying shame. Today is June 21st, which, aside from being the longest day of the year and the summer solstice, is also June, which is supposed to be Gay Pride Month or LGBTQ whatever month. So what do we get from the Washington Post? Was this revolutionary hero America's first openly gay general? Well, the fact that you had to ask the question already says no to at least part of that question. The fact that you're asking it is already part of the no. If he was openly gay, why are you asking if he was openly gay? You kind of wouldn't need to ask. For those who don't know, Hailed as an architect of drilling and discipline that continues to shape the U.S. Army today, Baron Friedrich Wilhelm von Steuben is honored by many. General George Washington wrote a fawning letter to von Steuben, his last in the final hours of Washington's commission on December 23rd, 1783, to signify in the strongest terms my entire appropriation of your conduct after years of von Steuben's faithful service. Congress voted to make one of the grand monuments in Lafayette Square across from the White House an ode to the Prussian officer who crossed the Atlantic to turn a farragineous group of untrained militiamen into the unified fighting force that beat the world's dominant military power in the Revolutionary War. To this day, memorial wreaths are placed at the base of the statue. Sometimes they have rainbow ribbons because people sit up there are saying that he was openly gay. Whether or not von Steuben was gay or not gay, all right, is immaterial. Okay. He wrote basically the instruction manuals for drill within the United States. And many of those drills and so forth are still practiced within the U.S. military during basic training. Okay. But once again, whether he was gay or not isn't something to be celebrated any more than being a heterosexual is something to celebrate from George Washington. And this is the whole problem with celebrating sexuality as a whole. Open sexuality, whether it's gay or heterosexual or any other form of sexuality you want to talk about, is something that's supposed to remain individualistic and private between the individual involved. Anything else, quite frankly, anything else is a type of degeneracy. Having sex in front of a group of people is a form of degeneracy, regardless of who your playmate is with. Or what, in the way we're talking about it in today's society. Just how much of a degeneracy? Well, there's different levels of degeneracy, sure. But to act like we need to celebrate that? Why? Why? Talk about degeneracy. Half-naked Iowa woman, 21, caught burning a stolen American flags at 4:25 a.m. Meet Brianna Laird. All right, a 21-year-old Iowan is behind bars after police say they found her naked from the waist down, burning American flags. Cops were dispatched at 4:25 a.m. Monday upon getting a report about a nude female lighting American flags in Bussy, a city about 60 miles from Des Moines. When officers located the suspect, she had an American flag tied around her head and was not wearing pants or underwear. After reportedly giving officers a false name, Laird allegedly resisted arrest, kicked two of the officers. It was learned that the flags that were taken and damaged belonged to the city of Bussy, an investigator reported. Seen at the right, Laird was found in possession of a bag containing drug paraphernalia. What a surprise! Laird, who lives in Knoxville, a city outside of Bussy, is locked up on $4,000 bond. She was arraigned today on a host of charges including arson, assault, indecent exposure, theft, and possession of drug paraphernalia, in addition to a criminal complaint filed today charges her with desecration of a flag. At the time of her arrest, she was on probation for a 2023 marijuana possession conviction. In 2022, she was convicted of a DUI. Surprise! 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 I'd be surprised if drugs were not involved. This girl needs to spend time in a mental clinic. Okay? Whatever demons are possessing her, she needs mental help, okay, before she slides into further destructive behavior. And I'm not talking about destructive behavior on a personal level, although that is a part of this, all right, obviously. But she went from being a danger to just herself to a danger to others, all right, and it's increasing. At some point, she's going to have to be held personally accountable. Just putting it out there, okay? Venezuela's currency crashes. How come this doesn't say again? Maduro locks up analysts, shut down dollar trackers. Failing to revive an economy in freefall, Nicolas Maduro's regime has now turned its sights to those who dare to describe the collapse. In recent weeks, authorities have detained economists, analysts, and digital platform operators who publish independent financial data, intensifying a campaign of repression aimed at concealing Venezuela's worsening economic crisis. In the latest chapter of the crackdown, at least 8 people have been arrested, including the former finance minister Rodrigo Cabiez, all right, 68, who was taken into custody earlier this month in the city of Maracaibo. I'm not trying to butcher the name of the city. His whereabouts remain unknown. Sources familiar with the detentions, who requested anonymity for fear of reprisals, said some detainees were released after a few hours. Others, however, remain in the custody of the Bolivarian National Intelligence Service, held without legal counsel or contact with their families. The arrest followed the publication of alarming inflation data among the independent Venezuelan Financial Observatory, which reported an annualized inflation rate of 229% as of May. The Central Bank of Venezuela, controlled by Maduro loyalists, stopped releasing official inflation figures in October 2024 when prices began surging again. Finally, they used the word again. The government wants to eliminate the parallel market without supplying enough dollars, and that's impossible, said the exiled economist Jose Guerrera, all right, who heads the observatory. They're trying to control inflation while printing more money without backing. Monetary liquidity increased 250% through May alone. That inevitably fuels more inflation. Really? What a surprise! Socialism at its best! In April, Maduro granted himself sweeping emergency powers and aimed at consolidating control over the economy, citing the need to protect Venezuela from the escalating global trade conflict triggered by U.S. tariffs. You're not even allowed to trade with the United States. And you're saying that the tariffs are what triggered this conflict? Oh, oh my god. Despite official reassurances, the currency markets are painting a different picture, one of accelerating collapse. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, don't you just love the media? More on the media from San Francisco Gate. California mountain towns could be decimated by public land sell-off. Oh my God! Our towns are going to be destroyed because the government land around us can be exploited. On these hot summer days, families and dogs find cool respite on the 200-yard sandy shoreline of Lake Tahoe's Kiva Beach. Swimmers head out to floating docks on Fallen Leaf Lake. Backpackers and hikers weave down Florida's forested paths into high alpine along the shoreline of Echo Lake. Come winter, chairlifts at Heavenly Palisades Alpine Meadows grant thousands of skiers and snowboards access to Tahoe's public lands, while backcountry skiers hike for their turns on snow covered slopes that seemingly dive into crystalline blue water above Rubicon Bay and Emerald Bay. In the Lost Sierra, a group of steadfast, devoted mountain bikers are currently building a trail network to connect 15 California mountain towns in the rolling hills. Oh, no! All right. All of these places are more exposed than ever to private interest, development, and resource extraction due to a proposal in the reconciliation bill moving through the Senate that would sell up to 3 million acres of public land in the West, including land in California. Given the administration's war on California and the fact that it mandates a process for certain millions of acres to be sold, California is getting ready to be in the crosshairs, said Wendy Schneider, the executive director of public lands advocacy group Friends of the Inyo. Hey, TM. Oh no! The federal government won't be able to manage the lands. Oh no! It's horrific. 3 million acres! Out of how many? How many acres of land, of public land, are there in California? Uh, let's look this up, shall we? Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. In California alone, okay? In California alone, the federal government owns between 635 to 640 million acres. $640 million acres are owned by the government in California alone. And these people are bitching about the sale of 3 million acres across 11 states. Do you see now why these people need to be dealt with? Oh, I take that back. According to this, it's 100 million acres. That's 640 million across the entire United States. 100 million in California alone, or 47 million in California alone, 48 million. And they're bitching about 3 million across all these lands. I'm sorry, I was referring to this area here. Folks, enough's enough. I'm not saying that all public land should be for sale, but the federal government owns too much land as it is. And to sell it for resource usage or development is not going to destroy these communities. Will the communities change? Yes, but they will not be destroyed. They're not going to be wiped out. All right. They need to start waking up. People need to wake the hell up. And if they're really all that worried about it, if this conservative group is really all that worried about it, you know what they could do? They could spend all this money that they're wasting on these other programs and actually buy the land themselves and turn it over to parks themselves. But see, they don't want to do that. It's always, well, it's, as long as it's somebody else's money being used for something and not my own, then it's okay. From CNN, at least 8 dead after a hot air balloon accident in southern Brazil. Oh my goodness. At least 8 people are dead following an accident involving a hot air balloon in Brazil's southern region of Santa Catarina, all right, on Saturday, according to a local governor. We are all shocked by the accident involving a balloon in Praia Grande this Saturday morning. Our rescue team is already on site. So far, we have confirmed 8 deaths. He said there was 21 people on board, and the other 13 at this point have survived. The video posted on social media shows that the hot air balloon catch fire while in the sky. The balloon then deflates and falls to the ground. We saw 2 people fall from above, and soon after the basket broke and the balloon fell, eyewitnesses told the media. An eyewitness said she ran to see where the balloon fell and saw 2 survivors, a woman covered in mud and in a state of shock, and a man with her who was limping, as well as 2 bodies. All right. Um, this, to be honest, there is film all over social media of this balloon collapse and terror. Right, it is horrifying. Right, to realize that there were people up there on, just enjoying the smooth ride of the air, because that's what balloon rides do. But for balloon enthusiasts, and they're out here in Arizona, there's a yearly balloon race, a regatta, whatever the heck they call it. All right. And it is interesting to see them floating all over the city, right? In Tucson, all right, as they race these things. But it's a dangerous sport, okay? Because things can happen. The balloon catching on fire is just one of many things that wrong that can happen in these things. All right, it can be very dangerous. It's a thrill, but understand, just like taking a rocket ride into space, these things can be dangerous. Those aspects are usually small. The ones that this one, if you take a look at it, it's pretty large. Okay, it's a lot larger than 4 square meters, to be honest. So it was fairly large. It was a very substantial balloon. Okay, to be honest, it looks very similar to the device that was hanging below the spy balloon from China that got shot down. It was more extensive than people realized. Just a few more stories, folks. A new species of cat has been found in the Andes. The discovery of an Andean mountain cat holds tremendous scientific significance beyond simply adding a new species to the taxonomic record. All right, as a top predator, it has evolved in isolation in an extreme environment. The cat offers valuable insights into adaptive evolution. Its psychological adaptations to high altitude, you mean physiological, excuse me, I said psychological, I meant physiological adaptations to high altitude could potentially inform human medical research related to oxygen utilization and cold tolerance. The species also presents an opportunity to study a predator-prey relationship in a relatively simple ecosystem with few competing predators, allowing for a cleaner ecological modeling. Kitty! And if we come back through here, we're going to take a few pictures of the cat itself. These are, they look like house cats to a large extent. They One of the things that's unique about these cats is they blend into the terrain, and their skin, their fur changes depending upon the season. So in the winter, when there's a lot of snow around, they are almost they are black and white, so that they can blend into the background. They're a very cool species. All right. They don't get very big. They're about the size of a house cat, right? So it's kind of nice to see this, to see that they've actually finally caught one, and DNA testing confirmed that it was a brand new species, right? Entirely. So it's completely unique. Is it? I mean, could you use one as a house cat? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. There's certain cats, believe it or not, that you can tame. Certain wild cats, and one of which most people didn't know this. One of the cat breeds, which actually can be turned into a house pet, and were during the old days of the pharaohs of Egypt, were cheetahs. Cheetahs make very good domestic pets, apparently. Right? I don't know how, because they would eat you out of house and home, considering how much they have to eat in order to survive, because they're a fairly large animal. I know of other people who keep caracals as pets, which are fairly large, as well. They're about twice the size of a normal house cat. Other cats are impossible to domesticate and never become fully domesticated. Bobcats, for example, are one of them. Bobcats are not a species you can domesticate. Tigers, you cannot domesticate. Um, I don't think you can domesticate lynxes either. So, regarding cheetahs, they don't see people as prey. Well, cheetahs are about the size of mountain lions. Mountain lions don't necessarily think of people as prey unless you're small enough. Turtle on runway causes plane crash. At least 2 dead in North Carolina, says officials. So now turtles are getting into the act, just jumping in front of planes. 2 people are dead, one seriously injured after a small private plane crashed in North Carolina, avoiding the reptile on the runway on June 3rd, a report said. According to an aviation investigation preliminary report by the National Transportation Safety Board, all right, the cause of the plane crash was the pilot attempting to avoid a turtle on the runway at the Sugar Valley Airport in Mocksville. A Unicom operator spotted the turtle and warned the pilot, who had landed on the runway. The pilot then lifted the right main wheel to avoid hitting the reptile. The Unicom operator stated that she heard the pilot advance the throttle after he raised the right wheel. The airplane left her point of view, and she was unable to see the airplane after that. A witness said that the wings of the plane began to rock back and forth before it took to the air again. The witness lost sight of the plane after it dipped below a hangar over some trees, where it vanished. The loud crash could be heard. So basically, the people, the plane was landing, and they were warned that there's a turtle on the runway. And the guy tried to avoid hitting the runway, and hitting the turtle on the runway. Uh, I I don't blame the guy per se, but you shouldn't have tried to take off again, dude. You should have just tried to dodge the turtle, hope for the best, and keep your passengers alive. Right? It's too bad they didn't notice the turtle earlier. The real sad part is it's very likely that if they wouldn't have tried to warn them, that they may have the pearl may have been fine if they landing may have been fine. All right, hard to say. Hard to say, folks. Final story of the day. Final story. British Zoo missing a mongoose turns up at a pub 15 miles away. A mongoose that escaped from a wildlife park on the British Isle of Man was safely captured after paying a visit to a local pub. The Kurgaz Wildlife Park in Bach, I'm not trying to pronounce it, I don't know how to, said the yellow mongoose named Jeff, all right, escaped last week by burrowing out of its enclosure and was on the loose for several days before turning up at the Heron and Beerley Brewery in Douglas, about 15 miles from the zoo. Jeff, who was born in September, is now back at the zoo and will be in quarantine for a short time before rejoining his family. Going through detox. Got to get the alcohol out of the system, I guess. Was it a small plane? Yes, it was a small plane. Zoo officials said that they suspect Jeff may have escaped to search for a mate. The zoo said it was in the process of finding Jeff a new home at another zoo where he can join a breeding program. Oh, very British mongoose. Yeah, just stop at the pub to look for look for someone to shag. That's all he's there for. Oh my goodness. Oh, apparently they didn't find the mate that they were looking for, and so they quickly wrangled him back, placed him in quarantine. That's the sad part for poor old Jeff. I was just out for a pint, man. And you lock me up and you send me away. Oh my goodness. What a shame. I wonder what Jeff was eating while he was out there. The Isle of Man, I have no idea. There could be snakes. There may not be snakes. I have no idea. Anyway, that was the last story for the day. Hope that you all have a good day. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Talk to y'all later. Enjoy the day. Bye bye.